Take a moment to look at your reflection. You see a modern human, a member of the most successful species to ever walk the earth. But what if that reflection is hiding a secret? For over a century, we've told ourselves a comfortable story, that we, Homo sapiens, were the sole survivors of the evolutionary race, smarter, faster, and more human than the primitive brutes who came before us. We were told the Neanderthals were a failed experiment, a clumsy dead end that vanished into the shadows of history 40,000 years ago because they simply couldn't keep up. But a revolutionary bombshell from Harvard geneticist David Reich is turning that story on its head. Reich argues that if you are of non-African descent, you aren't just a cousin to the Neanderthal, you are their descendant. While old textbooks claim we carry only a tiny 2% of their DNA, Reich suggests the actual ancestral contribution is far more staggering. When we look at the actual lineage, it's closer to 10 or 20%. This means the people who disappeared from the archaeological record didn't actually die out. They were absorbed. This is not just a minor correction in a scientific journal. It is a total reimagining of the human identity. We are not a pure species that replaced an inferior one. We are a mosaic. Today, we are going to peel back the layers of time and travel back to a world of ice and shadow. We're going to discover why everything you thought you knew about your caveman ancestors is wrong, and how their blood still flows through your veins today. To understand why we have misunderstood the Neanderthals for so long, we have to look back at the history of our own ego. When the first Neanderthal skull was discovered in 1856 in Germany's Neander Valley, the Victorian world was gripped by the idea of linear progress. They wanted to believe that humans were getting better, smarter, and more divine over time. When they saw the thick brow ridges and heavy bones of this ancient being, they didn't see a brother, they saw a monster. In 1863, the geologist William King famously declared that the Neanderthal was a separate species, one whose thoughts never soared beyond those of the brute. For the next 100 years, we used science to build a wall. We called ourselves Homo sapiens, the wise man, and relegated them to the status of a subhuman other. We painted them as knuckle-dragging cavemen who could barely grunt, let alone think. However, in the age of the genome, that wall is crumbling. We now know that the line between us and them was never a solid barrier. It was a shifting, blurry boundary. If two groups can meet, interact, and raise healthy children who go on to have their own families, the biological definition of separate species fails. The truth we are forced to confront is that Neanderthals and sapiens were two branches of the same family tree that, after thousands of years apart, finally decided to grow back together. To truly appreciate our ancestors, we must look at the world they mastered. While our sapiens ancestors were evolving in the warm, predictable savannas of Africa, the Neanderthals were conquering the most brutal environment on the planet, Ice Age Europe. They weren't just getting by. They were the apex predators of a landscape dominated by mammoths, cave lions, and miles of shifting glaciers. Physically, the Neanderthals were biological marvels. They were shorter and stockier than us, but they possessed a level of raw muscular power that no modern athlete could match. A Neanderthal male was a powerhouse of fast twitch muscle, capable of wrestling large prey in close-quarters combat. Their large noses were not a sign of primitivity, but were sophisticated biological radiators, designed to warm the freezing air of the tundra before it reached their lungs. They were masters of the ambush. In the thick, ancient forests that once covered Europe, they didn't need to run for miles to find food. They used their immense strength to strike from the shadows. However, their bodies came with a specific trade-off. Their long heel bones gave them explosive power for sprinting, but made them inefficient at walking long distances. They were the ultimate sprinters of the prehistoric world, while we, the sapiens, were the marathon runners. This subtle difference in the heel of the foot would eventually decide the fate of two lineages when the climate began to flip the script. Around 50,000 years ago, the European landscape underwent a violent transformation. The vast forests that the Neanderthals had called home for hundreds of thousands of years began to die back, replaced by endless, treeless tundras. This change in scenery was a disaster for a species built for ambush hunting. There were no more trees to hide behind, and the mammoths and reindeer could now see a predator coming from miles away. This is where the sapiens' advantage became clear. Our lighter frames and spring-like tendons allowed us to trek for days across the open plains with very little food. We didn't outthink the Neanderthals, we outwalked them. We could follow the migrating herds over the horizon, while the Neanderthals were trapped in shrinking pockets of forest. But more important than our legs was our social structure. Archaeological evidence shows that Neanderthals lived in small, isolated family groups. They were fiercely loyal, but socially closed. Sapiens, however, lived in massive, sprawling networks. We traded obsidian and seashells over hundreds of miles. When one sapiens group hit a period of famine, they had friends in the next valley who could help. When a Neanderthal group hit a hard winter, they were often entirely on their own. This lack of a social safety net made them incredibly vulnerable to local extinctions. As sapiens pushed further into Europe, the two groups inevitably met. For a long time, we imagined this as a war, a prehistoric genocide where the smarter humans wiped out the primitive ones. But the DNA tells a story that is much more intimate and, perhaps, more tragic. When we look at ancient DNA, we find a startling pattern. Almost all sapiens fossils from 40,000 years ago show recent Neanderthal ancestry. But we almost never find sapiens DNA in the last Neanderthals. This suggests a one-way flow of people. In the brutal logic of prehistoric survival, when a small, struggling Neanderthal group encountered a large, successful sapiens tribe, the survivors, often the women and children, were absorbed into the larger group. This was not a replacement, it was a merger. The Neanderthals didn't die out in a blaze of glory. They were slowly folded into the rising tide of the sapiens population. Their genes were diluted, generation after generation, until their physical form disappeared. But their biological code remained. They gave us the tools to survive in Europe, genes for skin color, hair texture, and immune responses that had been fine-tuned for the northern climate over 300,000 years. We didn't just move into their territory, we stole their biological armor. This isn't just a theoretical model of the past. We have found the literal missing links in the dirt. One of the most famous is a man known as Oasa I, whose 40,000-year-old jawbone was found in a Romanian cave. When scientists sequenced his genome, they were stunned. Oasa I had between 6% and 9% Neanderthal DNA, about triple what we have today. More importantly, his Neanderthal ancestor was only 4 to 6 generations back. This man likely grew up hearing stories of a great-great-grandparent who looked different, who was stronger, and who came from the old people of the mountains. He was a living bridge between two worlds. We also see this in the occipital bun, a bony knot at the back of the skull that was a trademark of the Neanderthals. Many people living today still have this bump. If you feel it at the base of your skull, you are touching a physical piece of the Ice Age. These findings prove that the interaction between our ancestors was not a series of brief, accidental encounters. It was a long, complex process of living together, sharing technology, and ultimately becoming one people. The Neanderthals were not a separate species going extinct. They were a branch of humanity coming home. As we reach the end of this journey, we have to ask, what does the story of the Neanderthal teach us about ourselves today? For over a century, we used the Neanderthals as a cautionary tale of failure. We told ourselves that we survived because we were the best, the brightest, and the most evolved. But the truth is much more humbling. The Neanderthals survived for 400,000 years, far longer than we have been around. They buried their dead with flowers. They cared for their elderly who couldn't hunt. And they possessed brains that were, on average, larger than our own. They didn't fail because they were stupid. They were simply hyper-specialized for a world that ceased to exist. The real secret to sapient survival was not our individual strength, but our ability to be flexible. We were the generalists. We were willing to change our diet, our tools, and our social structures. We were willing to absorb others and learn from them. The Neanderthal genes inside you are a testament to that flexibility. They are a reminder that our strength lies in our ability to integrate, to adapt, and to connect. The final lesson of the Neanderthal is a message for our future. In a world that often feels divided by small differences, the story of our DNA reminds us that we are all hybrids. There is no such thing as a pure human race. We are all the descendants of survivors who were brave enough to cross the valley and meet the other. The Neanderthals never truly left. They are in the way your immune system fights off a cold. They are in the way your skin reacts to the sun. They are in the very structure of your brain. They are the silent partners in every achievement of modern civilization. We are not their replacements. We are their continuation. Next time you look in the mirror, don't just see a modern human. Look deeper. See the resilience of the hunter who survived the great ice. See the strength of the titan who wrestled the woolly rhino. And see the wisdom of the sapiens who realized that together we are stronger. Stay curious, stay questioning, and remember, you carry the history of the world inside every cell of your body.